Join me as I dive into the thrilling world of the occult. In this reaction video, I'll uncover the secrets of L. Ron Hubbard, founder of the Church of Scientology, who merged science fiction with mysticism. Aleister Crowley, the notorious magician who sought to usher in a new spiritual age. And Jack Parsons, the rocket engineer and occultist behind the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, as well as masquerade balls of the 17th century, influenced by Louis XIV, powerful families tied to the Vatican. Plus, I will react to a cool video of the secretive Bohemian Grove, a gathering of the elites. Don't miss this captivating exploration of art, power, and the hidden dimensions of history.
And behavior which had to be followed, and everyone had to come in full costume.
What the Venetians. There they are.
The Carnival of Venice is an annual festival held in Venice, Italy, that ends with the Christian celebration of Lent, 40 days before Easter, the day before Ash Wednesday. The festival is world famous for its elaborate masks and currently seems to be growing in popularity since around the 80s or 90s. However, under the rule of the Holy Roman Emperor and later Emperor of Austria, Francis II, the festival was outlawed entirely in 1797, and the use of the masks became strictly forbidden. It reappeared gradually in the 19th century, but only for short periods, and usually for private feasts with rumored ritualistic activities.
Did you know Stanley Kubrick filmed his famous movie Eyes Wide Shut inside the Rothschild family's country estate? Theories swirled that Kubrick made his movie about the real-life ultra-elite and their secret occultic gatherings. Well, take a look at these pictures that show an actual Rothschild event from 1972. On the surface, it looks like a pretty magnificent surrealist ball, but there are clear occult references. Much like the film Eyes Wide Shut, occult imagery is hidden throughout the night, starting with the invitations, which were written backwards. Reversal or inversion of sacred objects is typical of black magic and satanic rituals. The exterior of the Château de Ferrier is lit up in a moving orange light, giving it the appearance of a fiery inferno. This hat, designed by Dali, also has hidden symbolism of androgyny by having half of Mona Lisa's face. Harnessing the male and female power is important to practitioners of the left-hand path. And although Dali traditionally paints ants and grasshoppers in his paintings to evoke death, decay, and trauma, this work of art has scarab beetles, which symbolize the Egyptian mysticism of Osiris, the Sun King. This guest's costume resembles the famous painting Son of Man by Magritte. Both the apple and the eye of Horus symbolize the forbidden knowledge of Lucifer in the Garden of Eden. The hostess, Marie-Helene de Rothschild, is seen wearing a giant horned head, crying real diamond tears. Is this a representation of the sacrifice to Baphomet, who will share wealth and riches only after sacrifice? It's not exactly clear when in 1972 this party took place, but from the look of the decorations and the menu, it's definitely a fertility ritual. The dinner table serves dismembered dolls and cracked skulls. For dessert, a human sacrifice in a bed of roses. The rose, of course, is a symbol used by many secret societies, and it represents virginity, fertility, sexuality, and immortality, as well as silence and secrecy. Here's Salvador Dali, who helmed the Surrealist movement. At first, this could seem like a Surrealism party in his honor, but consider the aims of the Surrealism movement itself, to resolve the contradictory condition of dreams versus reality, and allow the unconscious mind to express itself. Occult imagery is very real, and it's everywhere, in movies, television, music, and fashion. The power derived from these occult symbols and imagery is very real to the elitists that congregate in their separate reality.
So shall we burn thee once again this night? And then, in the flames that eat thine effigy, we shall read the sign, Midsummer sets us free. You shall burn me once again. Not with these flames. Summer sets us free.
Yeah, if billionaires are doing this, I think I'm going to choose Jesus. They're inverting the Bible. Like, I always thought the Bible was just a fantasy fairy tale, you know, until I saw how much money there is on the other side. You see billions of dollars and you're telling me they don't have any help from dark spirits? You're telling me pride, envy, all these sins are just material? It's just us and the material? I don't buy it. I actually feel dark forces when someone drops when a grandmother drops her wallet, you feel something pull at you to steal it. Right? What's crazy about dark forces is they're also in people you wouldn't expect. Like someone who looks innocent to you, like think of your like baby cousin, he's like 18 years old. There's a lot of dark spirits coursing through them. But you wouldn't expect it because you see them as a kid. Satan is a force. You felt that force. Yeah, Satan is molestation, Satan is rape, Satan is everything to harm you. Of course, the easiest way to describe this force is mind rape. You ever see an alcoholic? They drink themselves into nothing. You know, like nothing comes of their life. And what you guys got to remember is it snowballs. That satanic thinking snowballs. You know, it might start with like fapping 4 times a day, but you're going to snowball into a pedo. You're going to snowball far. And again, that's why I recommend you this book, right? It's thousands of years old and built the greatest societies on earth. Your depression, anxiety comes from your society that lacks this. You can't do the book alone. Get someone to read it to you, bitch. And get someone you really with. If Ye Fuentes 2024 happens, do you think they'll get cabinet position? Yeah, I think they're going to get a bullet in their heads. Do you understand that identity politics is illegal in this country? You need to snap out of it, dude. There is one ruling class, and they're not lefties, they're not righties, they are liberals. Liberalism is your ideology. You can maximize all liberty as long as it doesn't infringe on someone else's. They will justify any race talk as stand in front of the barrel type shit. That's why it's never happened. There is no strong racial identity for any of the groups. They just put them all black guys with LGBT and Mexicans and call it a group. But black guys and and Mexicans don't even like the LGBT when you look at it. But really racially, you look at the Black Lives Matter people, a lot of them who are more radical were found in car fires. All of them. And I got very sad watching Nick end his show. Because I said, hey man, to me, Nick will always be this really young Zoomer 18-year-old in my head. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're getting into. You think you get it, but I've been at the violent side of reality, and those kind of politics. And I'm not saying like there's a certain group that'll take him out. I'm saying the way humanity's programmed to think is that the whole matrix will be seeing Nick and Ye as disposable. Do you understand? Because everyone's going to try and play hero to stop them. And it's a very dangerous position they're in. They just need to add Mel Gibson to the team. But yeah, I don't know. I worry about that guy a lot. I worry about Ye. I worry about anyone. There's a reason why politicians try and win over, even like a Republican will try and be chill with Democrats as well, right? There's a reason why it's not fiery. It's because nobody wants to get headshotted, right? Only Trump was the one who said, let's get it spicy. I'll win faster this way. And Ye and Nick is not a movement. Everyone knows that Trump is the movement, and anything away from Trump will crash and burn. Everyone knows that, because we're suspecting Trump to crash and burn, like our side. But yeah. Also, you're gonna see something more. You're gonna see one of my predictions come to pass. Okay. Society is about to get a lot more Christian. I mean, the right is going to be very right. I'm telling you, during these end times, people pick up their book. Right? They don't just keep having fun and going out and having shots and, right? When they sense what's coming, everyone will be picking up their book. And that's when all hell will break loose. Really, the only thing you can do, Muslims too, well, I give Muslims more credit because they have their book. They don't have to pick it up. There's always an elder in the Muslim community who's holding the book. Whereas the Christians is very rare. It's so rare. They just totally liberalized. It's so bad. Hold on.
And that is just the tip of the iceberg. The elites are riddled with perverse secret societies that are obsessed with harnessing the power of dark forces.
For over 100 years, Skull and Bones members have included a president, vice presidents, Supreme Court justices, congressmen and senators, captains of science and industry, the very best of America.
Their God is Lord, their advisor. They're better or the Kaiser.
There's the public perception of the occult, and then what is actually happening. It's fantasy and folklore versus the real, intangible, dark power that the elite are able to harness by being practitioners of the occult.
Gigi?
And it's this very art and imagery that we see over and over again, that it's just the expression of their dark souls.
Course of the 12th.
Oh, Gigi, I love that
Over the course of the
YouTuber.
12th and 13th century into the 14th
She's
century.
great. She grew on me a
A
lot.
form of evil which is directly traced by the Venetians themselves to the ancient Canaanite city of...
By the way, the Phoenicians, right, and the Venetian black nobility, Babylon was saying these guys are too satanic. So think about how evil these guys were.
Tyre had risen to great power in the north of the Adriatic Sea. The city of Venice, which has been in recent time until he moved to London, the residence of Satan on earth. These people great power. They built a maritime power in the image of ancient Phoenicia, which is Canaan. Phoenicia is a Greek word. The people of that region were called the Canaanites. And the center of evil was Tyre. Tyre was destroyed by a great man, Alexander the Great. But the principle of Tyre lived on. And it came through the Roman Empire, it came to reside in Venice. And from about 800 AD on, Venice was an increasing power in the Mediterranean and became a great sea power, which became a dictatorship over the Mediterranean over the period from the course of the 12th century into the beginning of the 13th century with the so-called Fourth Crusade. And I can tell you all the crusades were frauds. They were all run by the Venetians. Nothing to do with Christianity, they had to do with something else. The Fourth Crusade was organized by Venice to conquer and loot Byzantium, which is its major competitor. And the Latin Empire in Byzantium was set up from 1204 to 1261, when a fellow called Michael Paleog overthrew it on behalf of the Greeks. But Venice became a great looting power. It crushed every element of civilization. It imposed evil cults. It spread the cult of Aristotle throughout the Mediterranean and other cults. It looted everything. It imposed its debt every place. It manipulated nations into making war on one another. They weren't real nations, but they were whatever passed for at that time. They plunged Europe into war and usury and looting and bestiality.
Rorschach donated $5.
And cruelty.
Read this tweet.
And nothing could seem to stop it.
Antichrist. He is the moon child
the political
created during
institutions
the
of
blood
Europe
moon.
collapsed at about
His mother
1250.
Mary died on the 6th day of the 6th
or over
month,
the period 1250 to
1966.
1267 in a series of wars. A leading figure of the late 13th century and early 14th century, Dante Alighieri, typified those who fought desperately to save civilization from this pestilence of Venice and the Venetians' Mongol allies who are attacking Europe from the west, from the east. Venice's power grew. Dante was probably murdered by the Venetians after a trip into Venice and its area. The ideas of Dante lived on through various networks. Not only Dante, but there were great Franciscans and others who continued the tradition, the Augustinian tradition, and developed it then as before. Then in the middle of the century, the 14th century, the whole system collapsed in a chain reaction of bankruptcy, starting with the King of England discovering by checking with his priest that not only was usury a mortal sin, but that he, as the King of England, by continuing to pay his debts to usury, was actually contributing to the eternal damnation of the soul of his creditors. So the King of England repudiated his debts to the houses of Bardi and Peruzzi, which were Florentine-based, but they were key bankers of the period, who had looted every part of Europe through this bank. It's very much like the IMF conditionalities today. As a matter of fact, the IMF conditionalities are a repetition, a continuation of the Venetian tradition. They are evil. The people who run the IMF are evil. The bureaucrats of the IMF as a collectivity are purely evil. They are mass murderers. So these people were crushed, and their political power was crushed by their bankruptcy. There's an analogy today. I'm not Plutarch, and I'm not a priest of the cult of Apollo, as he was, but comparisons are sometimes permitted. Today, as then, in the middle of the 14th century, the new Venetian Empire, which is the British Empire, or the Anglo-Dutch Empire, or whatever you want to call it, it's the same thing, is based on financial power. All finance and monetary systems today are divorced entirely from trade and production. They're engaged in pure speculation, in usury, debt as a form of usury, the looting of countries, of whole regions of the world. The power of the ruling oligarchy which are like Venetian families, Ford Foundation, this foundation, that foundation. This is what runs the United States, not the government. This is what runs the world, not the governments. The governments are run by these powerful families and their oligarchical connections, who control the Washington Post. They control the New York Times. They control the 3 TV networks. They control Jane Fonda. She might not admit it, but she's a real right-wing fascist, that Jane. They are looting the world. They have great power. People are afraid of them. They're afraid of the press. The Congress is afraid of the press. The Justice Department is controlled by these families. Everything is rotten, is controlled by these families. We say, well, what if these people suddenly lose their financial power? What if these banks go bankrupt? What if the IMF is liquidated? What if the international monetary institutions don't function? What if there's no facility by which these institutions can exert their power over society?
Rorschach donated $5. Trump's mother's name is Mary, so was Jesus. His aunt's name is Elizabeth, so was Jesus. His cousin name is John, so was Jesus. His life is a mockery of Christ. He has already been hailed King of Israel by Orthodox.
Right, then rebuild the temple and... Yeah, again, to believe in that, you would have to believe that Trump is not out here arresting Jeffrey Epstein. It's kind of ridiculous, dude. Right? You'd have to say he's on the side of the whatever they're called. Also, there's this thing about Trump that's interesting. There's nothing occult about him. He had a Kabbalah teacher and a Kabbalah award or something like that. But there's no photos of him doing anything Hillary Clinton emails type shit. There's nothing occult, unless he hides it better, but none of them hide it good. All right?
Today we are looking into a very peculiar, mysterious place. It's actually built beneath this church. Now, this may look like an ordinary church, but beneath this church is a subterranean chamber, which is part of the network of so-called hellfire caves, where high-ranking members of society, noblemen, politicians,
Rorschach donated
met underground
$5.
here in
Look
the
at the symbolism in his apartment of 66th floor in Trump Tower. It is filled with occultism.
Yeah, you're talking about the Apollo worship, right? I know what you're talking about. Hold on. Jesus, 66 Trump. Yeah, it's all about the sun god Apollo, or Lightbringer, Lucifer, or Osiris, or Horus. It's all the same thing. When you think of how much misery Joe Biden and his office brought to us, and then you're trying to get me to hate Mr. Trump. It's crazy to me.
Templar again. And this Theodore Royce told Crowley that he had given away the greatest secret in occult history. And Crowley said, "What do you mean? I don't even understand it." So the guy promptly initiated him on the spot to the 9th degree of the OTO and then explained the secret to him. And you're about to learn what this secret is. The secret is that as a Mason, you are promised immortality. Where do they get their promise of immortality? Simply, the secret that Crowley uncovered, probably through demonic intervention, is the secret that this immortality is conveyed through tantric sex magic.
Jack Parsons immersed himself into esoteric rituals and incorporated alchemical aspects of the occult into his propulsion technology. During rocket tests, for example, Parsons often recited Crowley's poem Hymn to Pan as a good luck charm. Parsons and the German aerospace engineer Werner von Braun had hours of telephone conversations about rocketry in their respective countries, as well as their own research. Von Braun was the leading figure in the development of rocket technology in nationalist Germany and a pioneer of rocket and space technology in the United States. Without Parsons, Neil Armstrong may have never set foot on the moon. And to those that don't believe America ever made it to the moon in the first place, then surely one can say that without Parsons, American military power might be a fraction of what it is today. His scientific contributions were probably downplayed because he was a leader of a black magic sex cult, of which Scientology founder L. Ron Hubbard was once a member, and also Jack Parsons' roommate. Hubbard was a relatively famous science fiction writer at the time, and Parsons was a big fan of the genre, and was...
Yeah, anyone got that video of me at the Church of Scientology and exposing that lady for being a Satanist?
Immediately taken with Hubbard, writing, quote, "He is a gentleman, red hair, green eyes, honest and intelligent, and we have become great friends." They allegedly participated in sex rituals in Parsons' Pasadena home and shared partners, with Hubbard eventually taking off and marrying Parsons' young girlfriend, as Hubbard also allegedly drew esoteric power and knowledge from these ancient alchemical secrets that were associated with Crowley's teachings.
A magician, the magic cults of the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th centuries in the Middle East were fascinating. The only modern work that has anything to do with them is trifle wild in spots, but it's fascinating work in itself, and that's work written by Aleister Crowley, the late Aleister Crowley, my very good friend. And he did himself a splendid piece of aesthetics built around those magic cults. It's a very interesting reading to get a hold of a copy of a book, quite rare, but it can be obtained, The Master Therion, Therion, The Master Therion by Aleister Crowley. He signs himself The Beast, the mark of the beast, 666. Very, very something or other.
While there has been debate as to the degree of influence Aleister Crowley has had on L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology, let's see what L. Ron Hubbard's son has to say.
My first guest, Ron DeWolf, was the son of the missing L. Ron Hubbard. Let's give him a big round of applause, please.
His deep involvement in personal use of drugs on himself and others, black magic.
When you say black magic, what are you talking about? I mean, some of the things that I read in the stack of material, it sounds just absolutely unbelievable. What are you talking about when you say this?
Well, the funny thing is that the actual truth is about as far out as Scientology itself. Really, the basis of Scientology, which is rather hidden and covered over, is the occult, the deep involvement with satanic powers that he felt that he was deeply involved with a British black magician called Aleister Crowley, and through putting himself in deep hypnotic trances and the use of drugs on himself, he wanted to become the most powerful being in the world.
How would you describe what Scientology is all about and what the Church of Scientology is all about?
Well, to put it in layman's sort of a succinct terms, Scientology says basically that 74 trillion years ago, everyone willed themselves into existence, and through space opera games and science fiction sort of things, they have created this universe. This is a universe created by you, me, and everybody else. And now we find ourselves trapped into bodies, and the goal of Scientology is to get untrapped from these bodies and to return to this godlike state which is called operating Thetan.
How do you do that?
Through applied philosophy, through sitting down across from each other in chairs with e-meters, which is a skin galvanometer with a meter dial on it, and through answering questions and asking questions. This is supposed to release the various charges and the problems one has had throughout all of these centuries and hundreds and thousands of reincarnations, get the charge off it as if it was these incidents were a charged battery, and by doing so, this is supposed to return you to this state of high ability. He was very deeply involved in black magic from early teenage years, which was the use of drugs and hypnosis as an example. He used to conjure up these demons and thereby plug into them or have them plug into him, and a lot of his early writing was, which could be called spirit writing. And so he was very deeply involved in black magic as an example, especially from Aleister Crowley, which was an English black magician, and around...
By the way, the Scientology dude, also billions of dollars. Every time they do black magic, they have billions of dollars. And all they gotta do is write a few spell circles on paper, incantation, hallucinate, and cut their fingers and bleed on the paper. Right? Because the thought is written out, right? You can put the thought into a space, and then it brings portals with it for things to help you. This material world is dominated by these spirits, right? And really the way you should see it, if it's confusing, all these names and stuff, is here, I drew it out. Okay? Just call Satan Saturn, and it's a force. It's a planetary force.
Let's go, pal.
Hold on.
I'm making a withdrawal here.
Rorschach donated $5. You wonder why Trump has Apollo symbolism in his apartment. The moment Trump was born, the sun stood in between the horns of Taurus. Trump is here to perform a Tauroctony ritual where Mithras kills a bull. Mithras represents
Apollo the bull represents God. Very based. Very good. However, we'll see what Trump gets done, right? Chances are they're not even going to let him run. But we'll see. For now, I seriously think you should stop choosing the side of the pedos. Like, peddling the Trump hate really supports Biden and Balenciaga, right? Don't go too far down the rabbit hole, dog. Not yet, at least. Because either way, let's say you were right, it is the Antichrist. Nothing could stop the Antichrist, right? It's not like you can fight it. You'd have to accept that the end times are here, right? And it's like, before the times end, how many kids do you want to save from Joe Biden's grip? All right. You know what? I don't have time for that. I gotta wrap it up soon, boys.
In 1947 or so, he decided that he was the Beast 666 incarnate, because that's what Aleister Crowley was, and he died in 1947.
While Crowley was a high-level Freemason, there are reports that L. Ron Hubbard was a Rosicrucian, at least for a brief period in 1940. The ancient and mystic Order of the Rosy Cross, as the organization is formally known,
Osiris.
has the symbol of a cross with a rose at its center. It has several meanings.
By the way, if you don't understand, like, oh, Horus is on the dollar bill, the eye watching you, Osiris is another sun god, and what about Ra? It's just different times of the day, right? When the sun's above you, 12 o'clock, depending on where the sun is, it's Ra, Osiris, right? It's just all the same sun worship, right? The light bringer.
Depending on the source, some claiming that the Rosy Cross predates Christianity, where the cross represents the human body and the rose represents the individual's unfolding consciousness.
It's not even all the way true, right? The rose represents Osiris dying on the cross. Look into that.
That's one.
Osiris is not a sun god. When the sun fully sets and goes into the tomb, that's Osiris.
Interpretation. Looking at this cross, we can clearly see 8 points, which can be traced back to the
Set is the
8-pointed star of Inanna of Sumer and Ishtar of ancient Babylon. This covert form of goddess worship.
What version of Christianity do you believe in? The version that says Jesus is the Lord of all lords and God, right? Kind of the same thing the elites say, but they're mad at God. Kind of like how the whole world is after one name. Everyone stood up to try and kill the name Jesus, and you're telling me that name has no power?
Was infused into the European secret societies by the Knights Templar. It was the Templars that built hundreds of Gothic cathedrals all over Europe from 1100 to 1300 AD, filled with esoteric symbolism that they brought back from the Middle East, such as Black Madonna statues, which have nothing to do with skin color, but are symbolic of the mother goddess, such as Isis, and, like the Black Kali goddess of India, represents the divine feminine energy, as light is first born from darkness. Just like the black sun symbol used by the nationalist Germany, who also adorned themselves with skull and bone symbolism, which were also identified with the Knights Templar, as were the Templar cross, the swastika, and the seal of Solomon, all present in the stone-carved churches of Lalibela, Ethiopia, erected by the Templars. Of course, the Templars are also associated with Baphomet, which is also symbolic of Lucifer, the light bringer, and the ancient Gnostic goddess religion, which involves tantrically induced, altered, trance-like states of consciousness, which allegedly avails the practitioner.
Look at the hands, right? The seething powers of Lucifer are in your hands, Manny P. Hall.
To psychic phenomena used in mediumship, as is attributed to the occult secret orders, such as the Vril Society, which has existed in pre-World War II Germany, and allegedly participated in channeling that resulted in advanced anti-gravitic propulsion technology, which incidentally became known as UFOs, a phenomena that started exactly during World War II. Of course, almost 80 years after the official end of the Second World War, it is still a subject shrouded in mystery, where incidents such as the battle over Los Angeles that involved a well-documented saucer-shaped craft is explained away, as is the crash in Roswell, New Mexico, or the still classified military invasion of Antarctica, known as Operation High Jump.
Rorschach donated $5.
No surprise
Last dono. You are right, John. I don't support Biden nor Democrats, but rest assured, Trump will 100% return in 2024. He is 424 like Messiah, son of David. He touched the Wailing Wall.
Exactly at the time hit 424, it is inevitable, he says. We'll see. We will see. It's not really a scary thing to me, right? The real question is, and the only question that matters for your mental health, have you been saved? Don't be all worried in my chat about end times. Right? It's not enough to read the book. You got to do acts of kindness. You got to be with your family. You've got to fuse the book with family. I mean, the book is really talking about family. The Father, Son, Mary, right? It's building up a family unit in your head. All right. We'll see. Because I don't know, these end timers are wrong about a lot of stuff. I know it's the end times, but it's always sooner than later. Like, it's always too soon. You guys remind me of the Mayan 2012 guys.
L. Ron Hubbard, who also spoke about saucer-shaped craft, was naval intelligence during World War II. And the death of Jack Parsons was also controversial, as he allegedly passed away from an explosion in his home in 1952. The same year, a fleet of a dozen saucer-shaped UFOs were photographed flying over the White House. There seems to be a missing gap between the conventional science of the general public, celebrated on monuments, and the covert Templar-derived science of antiquity.
All right, boys. I'm going to bed.